And happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
And welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other host.
And we're all together again. Yay. And we're so happy to be here for the special holiday edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party. Joining us today, Ben Cook-Feltz joining us from South Minneapolis, not far from my location.
Hello.
And Peter Remiger joining us from what, St. Paul?
St. Paul.
All right.
Welcome.
And we're so excited to have you both joining us today. Both sides of the river, Mississippi, represented today. And it looks like, Ben, I think this is a relative of yours joining us. Right on
hey,
time.
Dad. How's it going?
Cedar Falls is ready and waiting.
Cool.
Uh-huh. Hi, Connie.
Connie in Richfield. Hey, Connie.
Yay.
And Chris, hey, it's Ben's birthday. It is.
Oh, Ben's Day.
Ben's Day. That's true. Udapil's time with a great show. Yes.
Hey, Chris.
And you could tell we've all gotten a little bit festive for today's show. Some of us more than others. Ben, it looks like you're living in the Rudolph land.
Yes.
One
Welcome.
of those temporary storefronts, in the mall.
Yeah.
It's like only open for 3 months.
Yeah,
That's
that's where I
amazing.
am. Yeah, welcome to the inner workings of my brain every December.
It's not just
Yeah.
Love it.
December, as we're gonna, I think, as we dive into this holiday
fair enough.
recording, because holiday albums, and especially I know this one, maybe sometimes take up more of the year than just December or between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Mhm.
But Joe is checking in from Kowalski's on Hennepin.
All right. Hey, Joe.
For those of you who aren't from the Twin Cities, Kowalski's is a grocery store, so he's really multitasking, and that's what you have to do sometimes around the holidays.
And it looks like he's got a community sing at 5 p.m. All right.
All
Hey.
right. We're hopefully we will get you in the spirit for that. And
Or
speaking
maybe
of,
he's referring to our after party at 5.
yeah, exactly.
Either
That's
way,
true.
we're going to be singing. Joe's
That's
gonna be
right.
singing.
For our Patreon supporters, we're going to be having a special after party on Zoom. Alan joining us. I'm guessing he's in Texas. 70 degrees and time for a mojito. To each their own. And I want to know how people are getting in the holiday spirit with spirits or some other fun snacks or beverages. Tony, what are you enjoying?
Well,
That's
I
right.
am, despite the kind of relatively warm weather here in the Twin Cities, I'm trying to just manifest as much kind of holiday and winter vibes here with my Santa hat and my red wine from a box.
Excellent. Excellent. And Ben, what are you enjoying?
It is Christmas time, despite the thermometer, and I'm just enjoying a very nice hot cocoa from this mug. I think I inherited it from a friend who moved away a long time ago. I can't imagine that I would ever buy this, but
Looking at behind you, I might think it could be.
Okay, fair enough. I do buy those things. So
Yeah, exactly. And Peter, what are you enjoying on this Friday happy hour?
Well, like many people whose addictions maybe express themselves during the holidays, it's just straight black coffee.
Excellent. Well, I was on the fence as to which direction to go, but I wanted to be festive. But I wasn't ready for a more serious drink. So I made myself one of my favorite non-alcoholic cocktails, which is tonic with berries. So it's one of my Mother Banjo specialty cocktails that's in my Mojo cocktail recipe book. But
It looks delicious.
very
Well,
tasty.
cheers to you guys, and cheers to everybody out there listening today. If you're new to the show, Back Catalog Listening Parties, our weekly musical happy hour. We get together with our favorite artists, and we dig into their back catalog. And every December, we do our best to look into back catalogs that include holiday records. And I'm so excited about this one.
And speaking of first timers, Pam joining us for the first time, tuning in live on YouTube.
Hey, Pam. Welcome.
She said also grabbing coffee, and Anne is eating lots of pretzels and doing her Christmas card. So yes,
Perfect.
We're gonna provide a good soundtrack for you, Anne. And then Pam says, "I haven't done mine yet." Well, whatever you have to get done, whether it's grocery shopping, Christmas cards, or whether you're just kicking back and kicking off your holiday weekend, we're happy you're here. And for those of you, I know Ben Cook-Feltz pretty well. But for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Ben's music or didn't catch his original back catalog episode near the the launch of the show a few years ago. Maybe Ben, you could give your brief origin story, your 2-minute origin story about where you grew up, how you started making music, and in particular, what led you to make a Christmas record with Peter.
Sure. So yeah, I am originally from Cedar Falls, Iowa, as my dad mentioned in his little check-in there. I have lived in Minneapolis for nearly 20 years. It'll be 20 years in June. Came up here originally for school, really liked it, and I've stuck around. Then eventually I fell in love, got married, and set up a really nice Christmas village in the basement. So I'm all good now. I have been a musician pretty much all of my life. Taught myself to play the piano, studied percussion in college. It's just always been just an extension of who I am. There's no other way to explain it. And I've been writing songs for almost as much time as I've been playing. The reason that I made a Christmas album. So I made this album in the summer of 2020. And I'm not sure how many of you know what happened in the spring and summer of 2020, but we had a little pandemic, a little bit of a global shutdown. And personally, I mean, I don't think I was alone in this. Initially, I thought that the shutdown would provide me an opportunity to be creative and do a bunch of songwriting. I mean, I'd always kind of told myself that if I just had a little bit more time, I could really focus in and do that stuff. And suddenly I had nothing but time, but I wasn't feeling creative at all. I think there was just too much anxiety, too many uncertain questions about what was happening and how long it was going to last. And so I wasn't really feeling creative at the time, but I still wanted to do something. And I wanted to do something that brought me a fair amount of joy. And I wanted to do something that kept me connected to all of my musician friends that I suddenly wasn't seeing anymore. So it took about a month, but I settled on the idea of making a Christmas album. And I reached out to Peter, I think over Easter of 2020. And we started recording it in the summertime. And it was just a really nice thing to focus on when the entire world sort of felt like it was on fire.
Excellent.
Yeah. And Peter, you've been working with Ben for a long time. How did you guys first meet and start collaborating?
Well, Ben and I were both at McNally Smith College of Music. I was working there, and Ben was a student. We were both students there at some point in time. And I don't remember exactly how we met, if it was on a session or just word of mouth or what. But Ben at some point asked if I was interested in recording some of his stuff, and we did that. I think for Albatross was the first record.
Yep.
And it worked well. I feel like we clicked, and musically it worked, and we've just kind of kept doing it.
Nice. Well, I don't know about you all, but I need some music. What do you think?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think we're ready for it. We're ready.
Sure.
And let's see. The first track that you picked to feature on today's show is "There's No Place Like Home for the Holidays." And tell us a bit about this tune and why this one made the cut. There's obviously a lot of great holiday music that you love. Maybe we'll talk more about this, about how you chose which songs to include.
Yeah, I hope we do. Well, one of the reasons I picked this song, besides the fact that I thought it turned out pretty well and I'm proud of it, is it spotlights one of the more distinctive features of making this record. So since it was made during a pandemic, I'd say around 40% of the musicians that performed recorded their stuff remotely, rather than going into the studio. And it was a very unique way of making an album. It presented a different set of challenges than I was used to. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was just a very different way of recording. And on this particular track, there are two flown-in parts. One is Doug Otto on guitar and Haley Rydell on the fiddle. And one of the things I remember, if you notice, anyone who's a Christmas music purist might note that I'm not singing the melody exactly correctly. And that was because when I came time to overdub my voice, I realized that Doug had played a chord that was wrong. He played an A major instead of an A minor in the middle of a verse, which actually really did affect the melody because it just wasn't going to work. It was going to clash. And I thought to myself, well, wow, I've never known Doug to play a wrong chord before. Maybe he's just really stressed because of the pandemic and stuff. And then I looked at the chart and realized, no, I'd written it wrong. And I hadn't noticed. But since it wasn't in the studio, I couldn't be like, hey, Doug, there's this one wrong chord here. Do you mind re-recording the entire thing for me, or just patching in one chord? We couldn't do that. So we just had to get creative and modify the part.
Cool. I love those kind of tidbits. I'll be listening. All right, all you music folks out there, listen for that A major. This is Ben Cook-Feltz. There's no place like home for the holidays here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Oh, there's no place like home for the holidays, 'cause no matter how far away you roam, if you want to be happy in a million ways, for the holidays you can't beat home, sweet home. I met a man who lived in Tennessee, and he was heading for Pennsylvania and some homemade pumpkin pie. From Pennsylvania, folks are traveling down to Dixie's sunny shore. From Atlantic to Pacific, gee, the traffic is terrific. Though there's no place like home for the holidays, 'cause no matter how far away you roam, when you pine for the sunshine of a friendly gaze, for the holidays you can't beat home, sweet home. Doug Otto, ladies and gentlemen. I met a man who lived in Tennessee, and he was heading for Pennsylvania and some homemade pumpkin pie. Pennsylvania folks are traveling down to Dixie's sunny shore. From Atlantic to Pacific, gee, the traffic is terrific. Oh, there's no place like home for the holidays, 'cause no matter how far away you roam, if you want to be happy in a million ways, for the holidays you can't beat home, sweet home.
Classic Christmas right there. Ben Cook-Feltz.
Nice.
There's no place like home for the holidays, from his 2020 holiday record, Merry BCF-ing Christmas. And Chris Jetner wanted to know, how did you do the steel drum effect? Guitar magic? I think that's what he was hearing, those higher notes. I think.
It did have a little bit of that. I think with some resonance with the reverb or something, it was kind of had that vibe.
You know, that actually gives me the opportunity to throw a little praise Peter's way and talk about, because, you know, one of the things, I don't know if that's the sound we would have necessarily gone for if it had been entirely recorded in the studio, but we were sort of at the mercy of, you know, the quality of what people provided us. And honestly, I mean, like 98% of the time I thought it sounded really great, but it had to have been a little bit more of an unknown variable for Peter to have to deal with. But I think he did a wonderful job. I with a couple of exceptions, I'd never listen to this and be like, oh yeah, that person recorded it at home.
Was there some post-production on that, Peter? On that?
Oh, sure. And I mean, and that's not a dig on anybody. Everybody's recording in different rooms, in totally different scenarios, you know. So, And even we did some stuff at a studio and then did some stuff in my basement. So trying to get everything to reasonably sound like it was in a similar acoustic environment was kind of challenging sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that track sounds really great, and there's no place like home for the holidays. I also think it's funny because this was recorded when we were all at home, all the time.
Well, I mean, I was actually thinking more like,
like seeing family,
childhood home, that I wish I could go to.
Yeah, that makes sense, but it is kind of funny because we were all at home.
Fair enough. I mean, it did. Like there are a couple of songs on this record. This one, and there's another one that's a Muppet song called "Together at Christmas." And I do think that there was an extra. Certainly, I felt an extra resonance singing these songs, knowing that I did not know the next time I was going to get to go to my parents' home and actually connect with them for the holidays.
Yeah, and Joe said this album is truly a unique, creative take on Christmas, like Nick Lowe did on Christmas at the airport, not just swinging the old carols and such, but hey, I like that too. And there's just so much holiday music out there. And I know, since I know you very well, I know that in our home, there is a lot of Christmas music for a long chunk of time during the year. So how did you determine which ones? Was it just the ones you were going back to at this time, or?
Yeah, part of it was just the kind of songs that I had easily ready at my disposal. For a couple of years leading up to the pandemic, I would spend most of December playing gigs with Sarah Morris, duo gigs. And she already had a pretty established repertoire of all the classic songs. And so I would try to find songs that I could bring to the table that I really liked, but that were maybe a little off the beaten path. So some of it was that. And then also it was just, I didn't want to just cover all the same standards. That just didn't really interest me. I wanted to do songs that I loved that maybe people weren't as familiar with. There are a couple songs on here that are more well-known, but I do really dumb things to them. So,
and so there's some original material as well, right?
There is one original song. Which I think is the next song that we're going to be listening to.
Well, what a segue.
and also, we also had one question from Alan Hastings wanting to know, wait, who's watching Stan? That's Ben and I. We have a son named Stan.
We have two cats.
Yeah, so it's a good ratio. Two cats to one kid. Yeah. No, Stan's having more fun. Not more fun than us, but he's having fun at a friend's house. So he's well taken care of, and we can enjoy and enjoy this happy hour with all of you. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to tell us you're listening in the comments where you're tuned in from, if you're enjoying a beverage, and if you have any questions, because this show is interactive. And Mannheim.
Original holiday music. I gotta know where this comes from. Well, I think I have an idea of where this might come from, given the title. But please.
Well, elaborate. And I have to say, this is the first song that we recorded for the album, which I'm sure tested Peter's level of patience, but he seemed to really enjoy it. So, I knew I wanted to write at least one original song. And the idea of writing a Christmas song in general is very daunting to me because I love it so much. That said, I do harbor a genuine love for the first two Mannheim Steamroller Christmas albums.
Nice.
Mannheim Steamroller have made many, many Christmas albums, and anything after the first two are pretty terrible. But the first two are really special for me. I grew up listening to them, and I dearly love them. Usually they're the first things that I'll listen to at the start of the season to really get into the spirit. And I wanted to pay tribute, but I am also, a lifelong Godzilla fan. I understand that the things you love can also be really, really cheesy, and that's okay. You're supposed to celebrate them. So I decided to write a song that both paid tribute to and also poked a little bit of fun at all things Mannheim Steamroller. And it was really, really fun. We recording this track was an absolute blast. It was an exercise in indulging in all the things that maybe in the back of my mind I would have always wanted to do, but kind of hesitated because it would be a little too cheesy, a little too over the top. But for this song, we just threw all that stuff out the window. And yeah, I'm playing most everything on the track except for a very particular distinctive synth line that Peter is playing. And then there's a little bit of trombone on here. But I mean, like, we went all out on Mannheim Steamroller. I got a set of electric drums. We did some research to find like the patches that are closest to the sounds that Mannheim Steamroller uses. Thankfully, we figured out pretty quickly that I don't think they put a lot of work into what they're researching. It was always like bank 1 when you turn the keyboard on. But it was
cutting edge at the time.
Yeah, sure.
Those synth sounds, well, amazing. I can't wait for everybody to hear this one. An original Ben Cook-Feltz holiday track, Mannheim, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
I'm gonna play it by the rules. Got my stockings, got my wreath, got a big old tree with lots of presents underneath. But there's one thing that I'm acquiring to set the mood this Christmas night. So get ready for some inspiring. Let's start this holiday off right. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. We know what Christmas is about. Merry Christmas, very Merry Christmas. But it's not really Christmas without Mannheim Steamroller. Johnny Mathis, Sinatra, Crosby, they're just Hallmark schlock. When it's Christmas, the only path is paved by sweet Renaissance and rock. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. We know what Christmas is about. Merry Christmas, very Merry Christmas. But it's not really Christmas without Mannheim Steamroller. Throw the lights on. The snow's a falling, gonna make all the neighbors turn and stare. This Christmas, we're Omahaland, we know there's magic in the air. Merry Christmas, Merry Steamroller. Steamroller. Mannheim Steamroller.
Must be the waves from Lake Superior rolling in. Mannheim. That was Ben Cook-Feltz, an original paying tribute to Mannheim Steamroller. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Mannheim Steamroller, you just have to now take a listen to their, because this is like the best homage.
I think they have a pretty good taste of it now. Because you nailed it. You nailed it, Ben.
I know, and it's very much of a time. And I feel like can't remember when that album came out, or that first one.
The first one was 84.
Yeah, and you can kind of hear those synth vibes, those 80s vibes. And I'm just picturing like little young BCF, little Ben Cook-Feltz,
with the
listening
beard.
to with the beard and the jingle bells, listening to Mannheim Steamroller and like getting out his own Casio and being like, someday. And I feel like this song is like a culmination of like a lifelong dream to Mannheim Steamroller. And it's pretty much you and Peter, right? Like doing all those tracks pretty much.
The only thing that wasn't us was there's a very brief snippet of real trombone, because I can't remember if I asked him or if my friend Brian Zerngable just found out that I was making a Mannheim song and he was like, "Oh, I got to record a trombone part for you." And he did. And it was the craziest, like most like Neil Diamond 60s trombone line you can imagine. It was so great. and you know, we excised a little bit of it, but otherwise, yeah, it's me and Peter.
Which also is great because Mannheim Steamroller didn't just, I mean, there's a line in the song that says about, you know, combining sweet Renaissance and rock, but you know, like they had some traditional, like, like old instruments, acoustic instruments, and then they had all the synthesizer stuff kind of combined. So
yeah. I mean, the Chip Davis, not to go too much into Mannheim, but has a
go for it, man.
It's the season.
No, he has a genuine love for the holiday season that goes way beyond like disco versions of Deck the Halls and stuff like that. Like he has a lot of, you know, traditional Renaissance pieces and using a lot of lutes and flutes and things like that.
Thought I heard electronic flute going on there on the one of the that was one of my favorite parts, and I'm glad that you went electronic drums on this. So did you purchase that drum set just for this recording?
No, that came from my regular drummer Jim Crimmings, and I'm kind of glad because Jim spent the summer of 2020 getting married, which I can't imagine doing during a pandemic, but he did, and so because of that, he wasn't available since we had kind of a crunch timeline to do this. So my friend Johnny Grubb was playing drums on a lot of the tunes instead. But this, by borrowing his electronic drum kit, I still at least got to have him involved in some small way.
Nice. Well, that was really impressive, and people were loving it. For those who are just listening, we got some great comments like Chris Jetner's, wonder how this would translate to a huge cathedral pipe organ. And Joni says, definitely brings back memories. And then it looks like your dad chimed in here to take a little blame here for your for all of this. Denny Feltz says it's our fault. We stuck headphones on Ben when he was 2 years old. Yeah. Thanks, Denny.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that.
Well, if you just tuned into the back catalog listening party, this is the show where we invite different guest artists to revisit their old records with us. And in this case, it's a holiday episode. We're revisiting Ben Cook-Feltz's 2020 holiday album, Merry BCF-ing Christmas, with his producer, Peter Remiger, joining us as well. If you have any comments, questions, or anything like that, throw them in the comments. And if you like what you hear, you can buy this album. It's available on CD. You can get digital tracks as well. And yeah, look at that. When you look at that cover, you might not know that Mannheim track would be on there. It looks so classic, you know, and
it does. It does. I'm holding the physical CD here, and it really does sound great. Though you guys did a great job, especially considering all the limitations that you had to face, given the time that it was recorded. It sounds fantastic, and you wouldn't tell a lot of the tracks that it wasn't people live in a room. That last track, though, I could tell it was like on a spaceship somewhere.
Yeah.
But it was no.
Spaceship
This
from
really
Chuck
does
E.
sound
Cheese.
good. And now, Ben, you still have physical copies of this available on your website?
Yep, physical copies as well as digital, and then I do also have a few Merry BCF-ing Christmas ornaments remaining.
Whoa!
Mhm.
All right. Well, how would they get their hands on something like that?
Well, thank you for asking. You can go to my website, bencookfeltz.com. There's no hyphen in there, just Ben Cook-Feltz. Actually, it's on the little crawl on the bottom of the screen, so thank you.
Yeah.
And then just click on merch, and it's all there.
And we'll make sure to put that in the comments and in the show notes at backcataloglisteningparty.com/191.
And I also hear that there might be a new album that's even newer than Merry BCF-ing Christmas that's available on vinyl and some other formats and T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. So really, if you are okay with having it arrive after Christmas, there's plenty of things you could get for next year's
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah, stockpile now.
After all, there are only a few ornaments left, so you got to get them while they're hot.
It does sound great. I just really I wanted to say how much I loved kind of the little homage to some of the classic kind of Christmas records here that you did with the typography and a little play on the stereophonic recording. Another stereophonic recording. Can you talk a little bit about the art and design? I think you nailed it.
Yeah, well, thank you. That is John Hunt, the legend graphic designer.
Nice.
I'd always wanted to work with John, and I knew just from some of the other albums that I'd seen him design that he really has an eye and an affinity for classic vintage looking covers. So I reached out to him, and I mean, he was immediately on board. The cover that I had sent him as maybe like an inspiration was there's a Nat King Cole Christmas album where he's in front of a fireplace and he's got the cardigan on and all this stuff. And he absolutely nailed it. And it was also fun because our friend Kate Bailey did the photography, and that was also really cool because for 2 days in September 2020, we basically turned half of our living room into a winter wonderland. And then she came over and took some pictures, and I don't know, the whole thing was really special.
It looks fantastic.
And I will say, do you have that CD, Tony? Look at the back of that. Or the back. That's kind of like that Nat King Cole you were talking about. It's like you're by the fireplace with a gift.
With a gift.
Awesome.
And no beard.
No beard.
You can get those at bencookfeltz.com. And I think this next track that you picked to feature on today's show is like the complete opposite of Mannheim, pretty much.
Sort of. I actually think it has, in my whatever nerdy opinion, I think it has a little bit more in common. But it's the other side of Mannheim. It's the side that I still really, really love, which is the orchestral side. Yeah, so the next track that we're going to listen to is Some Children See Him. And this one maybe is my favorite song that we recorded for personal reasons. It's an instrumental track, for one thing. So long before I was writing songs with lyrics and things like that, I was writing instrumental pieces all throughout junior high and high school. As I was learning to play piano, I also wrote pieces. And the origins of this arrangement date back to the late 90s. When I was in junior high and high school, I made a few instrumental Christmas tapes. And this was going to be on a tape that I was working on in high school and that I didn't finish. And one of the things I would do is I would ask friends and family if they had any songs that they would like me to do arrangements of. And my dad was a big fan of the song Some Children See Him. I had never heard it before. And the only copy that we had at the time, because remember, this is the late 90s, so we didn't have access to even iTunes or Spotify or anything like that, was an old cassette recording of a very old record that my dad had. Great Songs of Christmas was what it was called. And it was a version by a woman named Diane Carroll. And it was very poor quality. So all I could really make out was the melody. I couldn't really make out any of the chords or anything like that. So I just wrote my own chords and did my own arrangement of the song. And for some reason, as I got older, even though all of the other instrumental stuff that I used to do just kind of fell by the wayside, I just kind of gave it up and I don't really do that stuff anymore. I kept coming back to Some Children See Him from time to time. And so when it came time to make this record, I thought, this is a song that I have to do. Not only because I love the song and because it's a bit of a callback to what I used to do when I was, first growing up and learning to play the piano, but also I wanted to do something as a dedication to my dad. This entire album is dedicated to him, but this song in particular, I made with him in mind, because the whole reason that I have a love for the holiday season comes from my dad. I don't know. It's just, it flows so naturally from him how much he loves the Christmas season. And as a result, my brothers and I all have a very genuine love for the season. And since it was a pandemic and I wasn't getting to see him, I thought I would do something that maybe he would enjoy. So that's where this came from. As we were working on the arrangement, I decided that I didn't want to do it by myself. I wanted to do something that was similar to not only Mannheim songs, but also songs that I listened to a lot in the 80s and 90s from labels like Narada or Windham Hill, where it would be keyboard synthesizer backgrounds, but then live instruments playing the melodies. And the first people I thought of to do a collaboration with were the OK Factor. I'm big fans of the work that Olivia and Carla do, and I also know that they are fellow Christmas nuts. They put out a couple of records of their own, and we played a couple of holiday shows together over the years. So it seemed like they were the right fit, and they absolutely were. We tracked this in one day at Peter's place in August of 2020, and it was just so much fun, and I couldn't be prouder of how it turned out.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's give it a listen. This is Ben Cook-Feltz. Some Children See Him on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Ben Cook-Feltz with the OK Factor doing Some Children See Him on his 2020 holiday record, Merry BCF-ing Christmas. And yeah, just beautiful. And I would agree. Yo-Yo Ma would love it. Well, I'm sure Olivia from the OK Factor, the cellist, appreciates that comment.
Joni says, so beautiful.
Yeah. And, it's funny you mentioned that you're kind of inspired by some of those holiday collections on Narada and the Windham Hill record labels, because the first time I heard Some Children See Him was on the George Winston album, the piano album, December. And that was a favorite in our household growing up. So, yeah, just beautiful, beautiful stuff. And as we pointed out in the comments, the OK Factor were featured on episode 51 of the Back Catalog Listening Party. And there they are, Olivia and Carla from the string duo recording. Peter, is that in your home studio?
That's the basement. Yeah.
Yeah. Gorgeous sound. I mean, that was just a really moving piece. And I was going to ask about the recording of that one, because it didn't sound like they were playing together, and it looks like we see the proof here. For those who are just listening, we're looking at a picture of the OK Factor in Peter's basement. Can you talk a little bit about your studio and like who came? It sounds like some of this record was recorded live and some was remoted in. Can you talk a little bit about that, Peter?
Sure. Yeah. So in my basement, as you can see, is like a vintage, what is that, 50s, 60s knotty pine, unrenovated space. It's a basement, right? Yeah. But honestly, I would have a hard time remembering who all has come through the door at this point, because we've done a couple of records down there, Ben and I. What I would say about that last track, first of all, I mean, it's just such a beautiful and sensitive performance by the OK Factor. And I think you'd be a fool to separate them as players, right? I mean, their whole thing is playing together and playing off of each other. So we really had to capture that sense of space in the room, and I think it turned out really, really beautifully. I love that track.
Yeah. It was really a beautiful, like take on us. I don't know the melody to that song. Is there words to the version you heard, Ben? For those lyrics that you were kind of, arranging for the strings and the piano.
Oh yeah, I wasn't really thinking about the words themselves when I was doing the arrangement, but yeah, the words are, I mean, they're pretty good. I would say they're fairly progressive for the time that they were written, which was late 40s, early 50s. It's just different ways that children see the baby Jesus around the world. So some children see him bronze and brown, some children see him lily white, like it, just a way of, it doesn't really matter how they perceive the baby Jesus. It's still the same story. It still means the same to them. It's really nice.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And this photo too, that you have some of these folks who are recording in the studio, maybe you could tell us who else is featured there and what tracks they perform on this.
Yeah, sure. So to the right of the OK Factor, that's Daddy Squeeze Newton, Dan Newton, one of my favorite people in the world. He plays accordion on a version of We Need a Little Christmas. Up at the top left, that's Sarah Morris. She is featured on a few tunes, including one that we might get a chance to listen to. I'm not sure, but a cover of Gordon Lightfoot's Song for a Winter's Night. And then to her left is the one and only Dan Gorder, who is also featured on Song for a Winter's Night, as well as a couple other tracks. He actually has the distinction of being the one person that both recorded live with us and also sent some tracks in remotely. And
okay, who's that, Ben?
Well, that is Fancy Ray McCloney.
That is amazing.
Okay, for those of you who don't live in the Twin Cities, maybe Tony or really any of you could say the importance of Fancy Ray and who Fancy Ray is.
Ben, I'm gonna defer to you on this. I've seen him much of my life, but I would like to hear your take.
I'd say, well, Fancy Ray is an absolute local legend. I, being a transplant, did not know that. I first met Fancy Ray because I started playing at the spiritual center that he goes to, and I would so all I saw was this guy dressing just perfectly in these beautiful, purple suits and things, and always being like, I don't know who this guy is. He seems interesting. And then I saw him on a billboard. There was a billboard for some sort of cell service, and it was like, a phone plan so cheap we could only afford Fancy Ray. And then I learned more about him. He's just he's made his life. He's a comedian, one-time gubernatorial candidate, salesperson for pretty much anything you can think of. Most of the people in my band know him because he did a series of commercials for Lickety Splits, which was an adult emporium, and I guess that they ran a lot in the 90s. But beyond that, he's just a wonderful human being. Like, just, he's so full of energy. He's such a positive person. And when it came time to make the record, one of my goals was to get as many people as I possibly could on this thing. I think there's up to 40 different musicians involved in some way, shape, or form. And so Fancy Ray cameos in a little skit where the BCF band is exchanging presents. There's the electronic drums right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just kind of, for those who are just listening, we're scrolling through some pictures that Ben sent of people recording in Peter's studio and also remoting in from other places, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that later. But
so
go ahead.
The photos you were just looking at, so those were all taken at the Hideaway, which is the other place that the album was recorded. We spent 3 days in early August tracking any of there were a few songs on this record that are with the full band, and this was our opportunity to do that. Plus, they also have a B3 there, so Lightning Joe on the bottom right came in and did some organ on a couple tunes.
Nice. Yeah, who else are we looking at here?
We are looking at, so the top left, that's me wearing what I thought was a serviceable mask. It actually wasn't. It was just a neck gaiter. But and then Johnny Grubb is behind me. He plays drums on a lot of the tunes. Top right is Cole Mickelson. And then bottom left, you can sort of see, is Jason Roberts playing guitar. He plays guitar on a version of Merry Christmas, Darling, turned the song into straight up Nat King Cole pastiche, and it just did an amazing job with that.
Nice.
And we have to mention, because we're only going to have time for like 4 or 5 songs here today on the Back Catalog Listening Party, but there's many tracks on the record with all these great guest musicians, and stylistically the songs range quite a bit, and there's some classics that and Ben referenced this earlier, but where, like you mentioned, Johnny, who plays drums, there's a particularly unique version of The Little Drummer Boy, and a few other ones, Sleigh Ride, and some with Katie Vernon. There's a whole bunch of really, let's just say, unique takes on these songs. So if you want something that doesn't sound like your typical Christmas album, but has plenty of joy, then you might want to pick it up. BenCook-Feltz.com. And also, again, you can also throw something in the tip jar. 'Tis the season at the Venmo. This is a great time we're going to get to some more music, but we want to make sure we thank our Patreon supporters. And these are the folks that give you this show every week and allow us to do this every week. We started the show during the pandemic, right around the time Ben was conceiving this Christmas album. Tony and I were also finding ways to connect with musicians and music loving people, and we've continued thanks to these folks: Penny, Anna, Linda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead, Pick and Parlor, Severin, Lynn, Mary, Many Tracks, Nikki, Joni, David, Sarah C, CJ, Wiley, Stephanie, and maybe you. If you want to join our community of supporters, you can go to patreon.com/Back Catalog Listening Party. And we do lots of fun things. You get first look at all the guests. We also have sometimes special after parties. And today is one of those days. We're going to have a holiday party on Zoom after this. So if you want maybe a bonus song, we'll probably get to that on the Zoom after party. So if you join now, we'll send you a link for that. But we will have time, I think, for one more song. Does that sound right?
Good.
Yeah.
So
I'd say for sure, we got to get one more in.
Exactly. So I think Merry Christmas, Everybody was the last track, Ben, that you wanted to do. What can you tell us about this song? Because this might not be one that everybody knows.
Yeah, so this was a fun one. The song was originally written by the band Slade in the 70s. It's a great tune. I actually had only been familiar with it for about 6 months before we recorded it. And this is a song where, kind of similar to Mannheim, we kind of took the Mannheim approach to this one, where it was like, no idea was too ridiculous, and let's record all of them, including a sing-along chorus of something like 10 or 12 different people from all over the country. So these are some of the people involved: Matthew French, Ben Miller, Ann Reed, Brandon Henry, and then Mary Bew, Kelly Michael, who's a longtime old friend of mine from Iowa. We used to sing together back when I was living there. Ted Heineshevitz, whose hand is blurred out because of what he was doing. And and also...
in the Christmas spirit, I see.
Yeah, there we go. And Dietrich Poppen, as well as several other people. So this is a really fun song. It's just a party of a song. And I have to give Peter a lot of credit, because when I brought all these songs to him before we started recording, we did a little bit of prep work, and I played him several versions of this song. And Peter was like, I've noticed that, because all of the versions were swung. So it was like, and here it is, da, 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 da. And he was like, none of the songs are played straight. Why don't we try that? And in his mind, I think he was envisioning something like Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. And in my brain, I started thinking of That Thing You Do. And I think we kind of put the two together. So it features the BCF band as it stands on this album. So Cole Mickelson, Andy Schuster, Johnny Grubb on drums. And then it also has Lightnin' Joe Peterson playing some organ. And then, just like I said, a plethora of background singers, including a cameo appearance from Sarah Morris singing a little bit of a feature of her own, and the one and only Doug Collins guesting as Santa Claus.
A couple of previous back catalog guests we'll link to, but I want to hear Peter's take on this real quick before we give it a spin, because Ben, that was a good setup, and I am actually really fascinated with those types of production decisions, like listening for things like, the rhythmic feel of a song. Peter, what do you remember about the arrangement of this one?
Well, I'd kind of forgotten about the swung versus straight thing, but it doesn't surprise me. I feel like there's lots of times when Ben comes in and we first start talking about stuff, I'm always kind of trying to think of ways to either twist it or make it unique. And a lot of times I'll throw suggestions out and he's like, no, we're never doing that. He rejects it straight out. And it's his music and he has the full power of veto. But I feel like that's one of the ways that we've worked well together, is we end up coming to something that we wouldn't have thought of in our own,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then the last question I wanted, while you were talking there, Ben, I was curious how you came about this song. You said it was kind of a new song, and being someone who's been in the Christmas game, as much as you are, was this like, did you pitch that you were putting a record out and someone, gave you some demos? Hey man, you got to listen to this. How did you get your hands on this one?
I heard it at Target.
Like in the music
Target,
version?
the grand artistic inspiration.
Yeah,
Target.
Target, if you will. No, the Christmas before, so Christmas 2019, I was doing some last minute stocking stuffer shopping at the Lake Street Target, and the song came on, and I Shazammed it, and I was like, this is a really good song. And it just so happened that, 3 months later, the world shut down, and 3 months after that, I made a Christmas album.
Awesome. Well, it's a great way to finish off our hour here with Ben Cook-Feltz. This is Merry Xmas, everybody, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Are you hanging up your stocking on the wall? It's the time that every Santa has a ball. Does he ride a red-nosed reindeer? Does will your daddy do when he sees Mama kissing Santa Claus? Kissing Santa Claus. Are you hanging up your stocking on the wall? Are you hoping that the snow will start to fall? Do you ride on down the hillside in a buggy you have made and land upon your head and you've been slayed? So here it is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun. Look to the future now, it's only just begun. So here it is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun. Look to the future now, it's only just begun. So here it is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun. Look to the future now, it's only just begun.
Can I say two very quick things before we wrap this up about that song? There's two things that are very Peter. That really high pitched vocal you heard at the very end, that's Peter singing that, which was
Nice.
amazing. The other thing was, I forgot about this, but during that breakdown when it's just drums and congas, I was doing a conga part and I started playing what essentially I thought was like Babaloo, like I Love Lucy. And I was doing it as a joke. And suddenly Peter was in the control room. He just gave me this huge thumbs up. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep doing it.
Nice. A little studio magic.
Oh, that song is so fun. And what I
That
love
was
is that
fun.
it captures kind of the exuberance of like in fact, your drummer, Johnny Grubb, who is drumming on that, who joined in on the comment, said this song is a party, one of my faves on the record. And
Hi,
it does
Johnny.
have that vibe. And even though some of you were recording it live, obviously a lot of people remoted their vocal parts in. But I think you did have a bunch of people in, was it the Southern Theater or where was it?
Oh, Theater in the Round.
Mm.
Yeah. So several, Doc, Becky Capel, Dieter, and Doug Collins all recorded their parts singing and playing guitar at the same time in the theater. I mean, very socially distanced. We all had to sign waivers before we entered the space, basically saying that, you know, they're not responsible if we gave ourselves COVID. But yeah, they did all their parts live, and then everyone else flown their stuff in.
And that was Doug Collins doing the ho ho ho's in that song.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that one. That's cool.
Yeah, there is video. Once a year,
nice.
Facebook reminds me that I just have like 30 seconds of Doug just standing there going ho 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 like over and over again.
Ben, would you ever be so kind to send us a link to that we could maybe
You got it.
put in the show notes? Okay, I want to
course.
see that. That sounds amazing. And one last thing here. I know we're running out of time here, but one of the pictures you sent just captured kind of a bit of a moment here, and I wanted to shock about the resourcefulness of you using a jar of cookie sprinkles as a shaker.
Yeah.
And maybe a metaphor of how you had to kind of put this kind of record together at this time. And and you know, we did everything in our power to overcome all of the darkness. and this is all. This seems to be a good representation of it. We're looking at a picture of a I don't know, some holiday sprinkles.
Yeah, funfetti or something like that.
Funfetti. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying before, those sprinkles actually came from a previous relationship, and for some reason they stayed. I mean, Ellen and I moved to a different house in 2019, and somehow those sprinkles moved
Followed
with
us.
followed us. And you know, being a drummer, as I know you are as well, Tony, anything is a drum.
Oh yeah.
Anything can be a drum. And I don't remember. I think I was just getting a dish out or something, and I saw those sprinkles, and I was like, aha, that's going to be a shaker on some track.
And they were so expired, they had just an extra extra attack,
Just the right,
Yeah,
it has to be just the right amount
transience on
expired.
that-
Yeah.
on that.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
I just to kind of like sum up my thoughts there, it was just, we all remember this time in our lives. It wasn't that long ago, and just hearing you guys singing that song together, apart but together, just reminds me of like why music is so important, and getting us through these kind of darkest times. We're what day away from the darkest day of the year here. The summer, or the winter solstice was yesterday, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling the light and I'm feeling the joy, and I just want to send a big thank you to you, Ben, and you, Peter, for coming along for the ride here, and spending an hour with us.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, I not to make this too long either, but making this record was absolutely just something that I did to cope with the times. And when I listen to it, I don't think about it as a Christmas record. I think of it as a pandemic record. And it really, like, whether or not we made a good album was almost secondary to just doing something to feel better and get through some very dark times. And I think because of that, or in spite of that, we managed to put something together that was really special. And I'm just very grateful to Peter and just everyone that was a part of this record. It made that very, very dark time pretty special and wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Connie said such a fun show, and Chris said super fun show. Ready for the long weekend? He said, see you for more in 2. And that's right. Our Patreon supporters, we're going to see you over in Zoom in just a little bit. And but for the rest of you, if you like the episode, as Steve does, awesome show, guys. Feeling the season extra large now. If you like it, like it on YouTube. Give it a thumbs up. Direct more bots to Ben Cook-Feltz.
That was not intentional. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening here.
He's just getting in the festive spirit. And
4th of July.
And so like it on YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll get alerted of next week's guest, because we do this every Friday at 4. Not always with Ben Cook-Feltz and Peter Remiger, but with other wonderful guests revisiting old records. And next week will be another special holiday episode, so you'll want to check that out. And again, big thanks to Ben and Peter for joining us from Minneapolis and St. Paul respectively, and to all of you joining us from all over the world. You are what make this a festive time really all year round. Friday at 4 p.m. best hour.
Yeah, it sure is. So thanks, folks. And our Patreon supporters, we're going to see you in just a couple minutes on Zoom. And for everybody else, have a wonderful holiday season. I'm hoping that the 2024 exceeds your expectations. So until next week, cheers.
Cheers.
And see you next time on the Back Catalog.